Hey guys, Miss Viren here. So we're going to go ahead and look at Unit 8, Learning Target 9, which is going to be our distance formula. So all you're doing is finding the distance between 2 points. So remember, when you're looking at our points, we have our x value, which is first, and then our y value, which is second. So you're going to have 2 of those, which is why you have an x sub 1 and a y sub 1, and an x sub 2 and a y sub 2. So these are just your 2 points. And this is the formula that you're going to use, and it's the same thing always. So you're going to plug in your coordinate points. So I'm going to take my x2 and I'm going to plug it in there. I'm going to take my y or my x1 and I'm going to plug it in there. Same thing with your y2s. So these are just being plugged in, and then you're just letting the calculator do all of the work. So let's go ahead and look at some examples here. Here is our equation that we want to use. It's the square root x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So we're just plugging in what we know. We know that this is our x1, y1, x2, y2. It doesn't matter which is which. If you would have labeled them the other way, that would be just fine, and you're still going to get the same answer. So now we're just going to plug in what we know. x2 I said was 11 minus x1 I said was 5 squared plus y2 I said was 7 minus y1, which is a negative 1 squared. So here's what we're going to do. We're actually just going to plug in everything underneath. So this whole thing is what we're going to plug in, including that squared. You want to include that squared. So the square root's just going to stay the square root. We're going to plug in the numbers into our calculator. So I'm going to do 11. And don't forget to put the parentheses in just like you see it. Plus 7 minus negative 1 squared. If I plug that in, I get 100. So I didn't touch the square root. It's still a square root. And then underneath it is 100. And I'm going to leave it just like that. So let's go ahead and look at number 2. Again, we're going to list what we know. We know the x1, y1, x2, y2. And we're going to plug it into that formula. So x2 I said was 4 minus x1 is a negative 4 plus y2 is a 17 minus y1 is 2. So now we're going to plug in everything underneath. So we're just plugging all of this into our calculator. So I do 4 minus 4 squared. So 4 minus negative 4 squared, right? And then I'm going to add 17 minus 2 squared. I get 289. So I still have the square root, and I just have 289 underneath. So the biggest thing you're going to watch for is those negatives. Go ahead and label. So if I plug in what I know, x2 is negative 4 minus x1, which is 2 squared, plus 6 minus 3 squared. Plug everything into your calculator. So negative 4 minus 2 squared plus 6 minus 3 squared. I get the square root, because we didn't touch that, of 45. Last example here before we do some word problems. So we have x1, y1, x2, y2. So plug in what we know, negative 2 minus 4 squared plus negative 5 minus negative 1 squared. So watch those negatives when you plug them in again. So negative 2 minus 4 squared plus negative 5 minus negative 1 squared. I get 52. So square root's going to stay, 52 is going to go in. So biggest thing right now is if you are just watching the video and copying things down without actually plugging it into your calculator, stop the video, and I want you to go back and I want you to plug these things in and make sure that you are getting the same answers I got. Because if you didn't, you're just doing calculator work wrong. And then you just have to reach out to me and I can help you with that. So now we're going to look at number 5 here. Difference between this is I give you a picture instead of 2 points, but that's okay because there's 2 points on the picture. We just have to figure out what the coordinates are. So remember, this is my x and this is my y. So to find this first coordinate, I went over the positive direction 1, and then I went down 2 in the y direction. So down tells me negative. So my first point is going to be 1, -2. So now my second point is this one up here. I went over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I went -5 because I went the negative direction. And then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And up is positive. So my second point is -5, 5. So now we're going to do the same thing we did before. I have an x1, y1, and x2, y2, and I'm going to plug in what I know. So I got x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Plugging that into my calculator, I get -5 minus 1 squared plus 5 minus -2 squared. And I end up with the square root of 85. So same idea for number 6. I have 2 points here. I just have to figure out what they are. So this first point, I went over in the x direction 1, 2, 3, 4, and that was positive. And then I didn't go up or down at all, so my y is 0. So my first point is 4, 0. My second point then is starting here, I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so I went -5 because I went to the left, and then I went the positive direction 1. So now I'm going to have my x1, y1, x2, y2, and I'm going to plug it in. -5 minus 4 squared plus 1 minus 0 squared. Going into my calculator, -5 minus 4 squared plus 1 minus 0 squared. I get the square root of 82. All right, let's go ahead and look at some word problems here. So Shelby hit a mini golf ball 12 feet past the hole and 3 feet to the left. Her first putt traveled 2 feet beyond the cup and 4 feet to the right. How far did the ball travel on her first putt? So here is the hole. Okay, she hit a mini golf ball 12 feet past the hole and 3 feet to the left. So let's pretend like this is 0, 0. So if this is like my origin here, or my graph here, this ball went 12 feet past, so it went 12 feet up, and then 3 feet to the left. So the ball ended up right here. So if it went 3 to the left, it went -3, and then 12 feet up, that's the coordinate point for that. Her second one then went 2 feet beyond the cup and 1 foot to the right. So 2 feet beyond the cup, so 2 feet up, and then 1 foot to the right. That's where that ball ended up. So we went 1 to the right and then 2 past. So there's my 2 points. So I have -3, 12, and I have 1, 2. So I am going to have an x1, y1, and an x2, y2. So we're just going to do the same thing we were doing before. We're going to plug it into the calculator. So 1 minus -3 squared plus 2 minus 12 squared. If we plug that in, we are going to end up with square root of 116. Now we're going to look. Mr. Pickens, Mr. Berg, and Mr. Miller are getting ready for their feature at the Pep Fest. Mr. Pickens is standing 7 feet to the right and 3 feet in front of Berg, and Mr. Miller is standing 6 feet to the left and 8 feet in front of Berg. So we're going to draw a model, and then we're going to find the distance between Miller and Pickens. Think of right, or to the right and to the left as x coordinates, and in front is y coordinates. So here's what we're going to do. Right here, this is Berg. Okay, that's Mr. Berg. So to find out where Mr. Pickens is, we're going to go 7 feet to the right. Well, each of these is a 2. So that's 2, 4, 6. So 7's going to be like right here. And then we're going to go 3 feet in front of Berg. So again, these are each 2. So we're going to go 3, which is right here. If I were to label that as a coordinate point, we went 7, 3. So that is Pickens. So now we need to find Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller is 6 feet to the left. So he's at a 2, 4, -6 here, because left is negative. And then 8 feet in front, so 2, 4, 6, 8. So this is Miller. And if we were to label that, we went -6, 8. Because again, that negative tells me it was to the left. So here's my 2 points. Again, we have an x1, y1, x2, y2. We're just going to plug it in. So 7 minus -6 squared plus 3 minus 8 squared. Go into my calculator here. 7 minus -6 squared plus 3 minus 8 squared. I get the square root of 194. Last problem here. Mr. Hooper is walking to the store. He has to walk 3 miles west and then 6 miles north. How far did he walk? All right, so here's where he's starting. He's going to walk 3 miles west. So we need to know our west. So this is never eat soggy waffles, right? So he's going to go 3 miles west. 1, 2, 3. So this is 3 miles west. And he's going to go north 6 miles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We want to know how far, this is kind of worded funny, but how far would it take for him to walk all the way back here? So for me, this makes a right triangle. I see that right away, and the one across that we're looking for would be our C value. So if you think back to that old lesson that we did, anytime you have a right triangle, we can use Pythagorean theorem. We don't have to use distance formula. They're very closely related. So we're going to plug in what we know. Well, I know A is 3 squared. Plus 6 squared is going to equal C squared. So I can plug in 3 squared plus 6 squared in my calculator. And I end up with 45 is going to equal C squared. So remember, to get rid of that square, we have to do the square root. So those cancel, and I'm left with C equals the square root of 45. So you are on to your assignment for today. If you have any questions, reach out to Miss Azles and I, and we can help you.